tired of being brutalized, the victim of white lies. What about black lives? Single knee to the neck, body slammed to the ground. Couldn't take a single breath. White policeman kneeling down. I can't breathe, was his final sound.
Joining me is a very special guest. Dan Hill is a Canadian Grammy and Juno award-winning singer and songwriter. He's also an author and a runner, and he's here today to talk about his successful career and his new album and his running. Welcome, Dan.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Christine. It's just so wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, so how are you during the pandemic?
Well, you know, as I kind of told you before we got into this interview, ironically enough, for me, I recorded my entire album with my producer in his studio, you know, for about 4 months. And all the while, as I was recording, I was continuing to write songs and then insert them into the album. And in a very strange way, COVID played into my favor, you know, because, you know, all activities were eliminated. You had to stay within your bubble. And so it made it very easy for me to go to the studio every day, or at least 5 days a week, and just play my piano, play my guitar, do my vocals, you know, create the instrumentation around the songs. It was actually, although I was, of course, hyper aware of COVID and the, you know, unceasing and increasing damage it was doing and has done, it hadn't personally affected me. Strangely enough, in an odd way, it kind of benefited me.
I mean, your title of your album is On the Other Side of Here, and it's 14 songs.
15,
is that correct?
Actually, 15. Yeah, I added one.
Yeah. So tell us, like, the album or the songs is personal stories. Can you tell us?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's kind of, they tend to be universal stories dealing with the conflict, sometimes self-loathing, you know, anxieties that we all go through at any age. And I would usually really focus on the darkness and the conflicts in the verses, and then transition into a shimmering chorus, you know, full of light and positivity. So the contrast sort of between the verses and the choruses were quite dramatic. And so I addressed, you know, I did address COVID in the verses of On the Other Side of Here, and also addressed the political divide and how alienated and paranoid and uncertain everybody feels. And then at the end of the chorus, I say, but there is light on the other side of here. So songs about forgiveness, called Forgiveness, about forgiving yourself and others, and about suspending judgment, which is a kind of a built-in human trait to judge others, which ultimately can be very toxic. Redemption. You know, I also wrote love songs. So, you know, probably only 4 or 5 out of the 15 are actual love songs, but different than my earlier love songs. In these love songs, I refer to some of the mistakes I made and don't heap the blame on the woman that I'm writing about. So they become, I think, probably a little bit more self-realized, actualized, and although they're still very, very passionate, perhaps wiser.
Right. And it's a healing. It's about healing, right? And
yeah.
Yeah. So you said you added one. Why did you add one?
Well, kind of a crazy story, but I've written and recorded probably, I don't want to exaggerate, but I would imagine about 1,000 songs over my lifetime. And I was feeling that because I wrote all the songs on this album on piano and played most of the songs on piano on this record. And though I had a few guitar songs, I was concerned that there weren't enough. Also because of COVID, we weren't bringing in any outside musicians. So beyond my guitar playing, my piano playing, and my vocals and all my background vocals, Anthony, my producer, and I had to add all the instrumentation on our own. And then I just kind of rediscovered this track called "To Be With You" that I recorded actually 20 years ago and was covered by a huge country singer in the States named Jamie O'Neill. And the recording I have of me singing it was the demo that made her fall in love with the song. It also had several Spanish covers. So I literally just took this track, which is 20 years of age, and stuck it on the album. And it seems like the vocal is still kind of consistent with the vocals I'm doing now. I think the running helps because running, as you know, a huge element of running is breathing. And an astonishing amount of singing is breathing. And because sometimes I jam a lot of words into a phrase, I have to be very cognizant of taking really, really deep breaths in between phrases. So I think that is one of the things that has kept my singing, very, very fresh and kind of almost youthful, if for lack of a better word.
Yes. And you've also written songs for other artists, right? Like Jeanette Renault, you've written a song.
Yeah. I've had, I've been very lucky. I think what happened is that in the 70s and 80s, starting in 1975, I was releasing albums at a pace of one a year, writing them myself, touring 300 days a year, doing publicity, doing promotion. And then, though I wasn't outputting quite as much in the 80s, it was still a very, very intense time in terms of my singing career and of putting out records and singles. And I think by the time the 90s came, I guess I was in my 40s, I'd already been, putting out records and writing them for over 20 years. And I found it really, really liberating to write for other singers and bands. And you have this kind of credibility, kind of like going from a competitive runner to, say, a running coach. You have the experience of participating as a runner or as a recording artist, and then you can relay that to the artist. So when I was, say, producing Celine Dion on her Grammy-winning album "Falling Into You," if I wanted her to sing something differently than what she was singing, I could just sing it to her, right? I could sing it to her exactly the way I felt it should be sung, and she would pick up on that immediately. And then, with her great ear and great discipline, would then re-sing the song. And so I spent a lot of time in the studio with many artists that recorded my songs, because a lot of them were kind of flummoxed by how big my vocal range is. And we're trying to figure out how in the heck they could hit all those notes. So I would go into the studio and coach them. Often I would sing background vocals on the records, and I ended up, somehow, amazingly enough, amassing over 100 covers.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, which came first? Was it music or running or both?
Well, that's a really good question. I started playing classical guitar when I was about 7.
Wow.
I was singing constantly with absolute love, everywhere, to myself, in front of everybody, from the age of 3. I'd sort of been blessed with this unusually good singing voice, by the time I was talking. So, though I love sports, being in a public school, playing soccer, football, all that kind of stuff, a lot of my time was spent practicing the guitar, and then ultimately, as a very young teenager, teaching classical guitar lessons.
I want to congratulate you on your new single. It was dropped today, right? What about Black Lives?
Yeah.
Can you tell us? I mean, it's a powerful message, but I would like you to tell the viewers, the process and.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, as you know, I'm the child of a biracial marriage, and
yes.
Anyway.
Dan? Yes. Sorry, Dan.
The racism was
it's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And
so
Dan,
sorry about this. So I relate very strongly to the systemic murder of countless Black people by policemen and other people over 400 years. I was asked by the people that advised me and my kind of business managers that I should write something about this issue. And I was afraid that if I wrote something or spoke publicly, that it might come across as lecturing and pompous. So what I did is I went to my most natural, innate skill and wrote What About Black Lives? I wanted to start with a question, as opposed to a declaration or a judgment. I was like trying to reach out to the world, trying to find a connection and sharing with them my profound hurt. And then what I really tried to do while writing in the verses was to write the scene, but not editorialize about the scene. So I would talk about, what was going on the streets and Black men marching, wearing masks into the night, or the president calling in the National Guard. So I would write about the president calling in the National Guard, but I wouldn't then, start talking about how I felt about that. I wanted to leave that to the listeners to determine. I think that's what kind of ultimately made the song have such huge connection. I think starting with a question, really, really helped the song. And as I was writing it, I started writing it, calling it a whole different title. And the song kind of came to me in 3 different sections. And, at the end of each chorus, I go, tired of being brutalized, and then, minimized or criticized. And there are so many rhymes that end with "ized," right? That I think I went through about 500 rhymes. And I don't use a rhyming kind of dictionary or application, just trying to find the perfect rhymes, for the end of that chorus, which was kind of a lot of fun. But then as I wrote the song, it was a little bit, though I have written many songs dealing with race over the years, none of them have been hits. And so I was a little bit self-conscious, not sure how good it was and whether people would like it. And then, I ended up being overwhelmed by how people connected to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I, it's a powerful message, and there's signs up, and I've watched the video several times, and each time I'm watching it, I'm learning something.
Right.
And I like when this young boy, I think it's our time to make a difference. It's our time to make a difference. So it's more than time. Like it's about time. And this song, what would you want people to get from the message that you're saying? Like, it's time to, address the issues more.
It's time to kind of get outside of yourself and not hide behind if you happen to be part of the privileged class. And I'm not criticizing the privileged class, but developing an empathy, a concern, and actual, actions in terms of addressing not just the systemic racism, but the huge economic disparities and disenfranchisement. My son, I wrote about this about 15 years ago, had 20 friends and associates killed, murdered by gun. And I think one of the most endangered species of all, in North America at least, is young adult Black males. And so we definitely need to have, a lot more community outreach, mentoring programs, activities such as the activities I was lucky enough and you were lucky enough to get into growing up, because, due to our history, a lot of young Black males have come from absolutely shattered families, and so they really need to have mentors and purpose, and that definitely has to be instigated. Right now, we're not in the process of instigating, but for the first time, the media is openly talking about racist practices. For example, my father, my mother, and my sister, about 40 years ago, took on the RCMP. And everybody thought they were crazy, radical, paranoid. The RCMP were Canada's perfect police. And of course, now, every day, there are new discoveries about, unbelievable racism and sexism and sexual abuse, amongst the ranks of the RCMP. So the good thing is that at least now the media, tends to be bringing these issues out into the open, whereas they didn't do that at all, even say a year ago.
Mm-hmm. And it's available now. So Dan, I would like to go back, tell us a bit more about the process of the song, how long did it take you?
Good question. Well, one of the things that I was really sensitive to is, unlike a lot of my past records where, it's not like I'm reaching for notes, but I'm, a lot of them were how high can you sing kind of thing, especially in the 80s records, and how hard can you sing? And I was very conscious of keeping the vocal calm, not histrionic at all, kind of reserved while at the same time, quietly vulnerable in reaching out. And the feedback I've had is that the vocal performance is a big part of what has driven the song. Also, we started recording the song and we put drums in the song. And then I decided that the drums were taking away from the song. And the minute we took the drums out of the song, all the instrumentation, from the strings to the guitars to the piano to my voice, and I recorded layer after layer of background vocals, suddenly, were revealed in this sort of a beautiful kind of a magical swirl. The song was recorded very, very quickly. It was probably done from start to finish in about 3 days. I'd already been, signed by, this huge distributor internationally in the States, who had heard 2 of the songs from my album and really loved them. And then I sent them the lyric video to What About Black Lives, without really thinking too much about it, frankly. And within minutes of hearing the song, I got calls from the president and from my entertainment lawyer, crying on the phone, actually, expressing how amazingly moved they were by the song and the corresponding lyric video. And that's when I realized that they immediately said, this has to be the first single, which had never occurred to me. And I guess that was kind of like a turning point in the album, though I didn't know it at the time.
Well, I mentioned to you, I've watched it several times and it evokes emotion. I get emotional about it, and I'm, so thank you for, sharing. Where can people buy it? It's all over.
I should really know the answer to that question. I guess if you go to my website, you will find it. I'm really sorry. I have all these people doing these things for me, and I for some reason I should write down all the different ways that they can access this. But I'm sure if they Google Dan Hill,
yes,
say .com, you know, all the information about how they can stream, and listen not only to that song, but they've also combined with this song or attached many of the articles I've written, several of which, you know, have had to do with you know, Black issues and challenges, as well as a lot of my past songs and past covers.
Yes, thank you. And what's next for you, Dan? Because a new album's going to be released in February, right?
Yeah, maybe in January, maybe in February. Well,
okay.
I've had a lot of requests for me to do virtual concerts. In particular, you know, a virtual performance of What About Black Lives. So obviously, you actually can do concerts, provided that the audience is minimal, that you're practicing social distance, and then the concerts are streamed out to tens of thousands of people. So I've been asked to do concerts in that situation, and so far, you know, because I've been asked to fly places to do concerts, but due to COVID and my caution, I haven't been doing that. I am in the process of writing a series of articles, you know, one of which explains my first encounter with racism hours before I was born, you know, when the doctors were so angry that my mother and father were of mixed race that they told my mother when she was in labor with me that she was having an appendicitis attack, took out her appendix while she was in extreme labor with me, almost killed her and me. So I have a story about that as well.
Oh, I want to read it.
Thank you. I'll send it to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dan, I mean, I could talk to you all day. Like, you're amazing.
And you too, me.
No, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that, you know, just how important human connection is. You know, obviously it's difficult now, but you can do, as we're doing, Zoom calls or even phone calls. How important it is, and this is the natural human condition, to transcend self-judgment, self-criticism, self-hate, you know, and to practice self-compassion. As well as, of course, extending compassion and kindness to others.